Max Keiser, this is the Keiser Report. Max and Stacy have been talking about the global insurrection against banker occupation now for more than 15 years. It's coming to a head.
Right. The New York Times doesn't use GIABO, the global insurrection against banker occupation. What they use instead is the revolt of the public. And that's how they're looking at the whole situation we've seen with Wall Street Bets taking on reviving on a practically dead company called GameStop and using that zombie against the zombifiers, the people who zombify the economy, the hedge funds, the private equity and stuff like that. So let's look at this headline. The GameStop reckoning was a long time coming. This week, gleeful online hordes turned the stock market upside down. This shouldn't come as a surprise. While watching the GameStop drama, I've been reflecting on what the author Martin Gurri calls the revolt of the public. Mr. Gurri writes that the internet has empowered ordinary citizens by giving them new information and tools, which they then use to discover the flaws in the systems and institutions that govern their lives. Once they discover these shortcomings, he writes, these citizens often rebel, tearing down elites and dominant institutions out of anger at having been lied to and withheld from.
So we've been ahead of this curve. We invented Karma Bank, which was a way to use short sales to completely re-establish the balance of the powerful and those who were being powerfully exploited. And we invented Crash JP Morgan Buy Silver right here on this show back in 2010. And then we started talking about Bitcoin, which is the ultimate equalizer. Bitcoin is to finance what the Smith & Wesson was to the Old West.
The other important thing that we've identified and we've been talking about is that this loss of faith in the institutions, and once it's gone, throughout history we've seen this happen quite a few dozens of times, where seemingly indomitable permanent institutions just disintegrate like a sandcastle overnight. And I think that's part of what we're seeing. And it really started back in 2008, 2009, when the game was exposed. If this is all a game of redistributing wealth up towards them through the Cantillon effect of the money printing, it was all exposed like that. It's a rigged game in 2008 when who got rescued for their horrible mistakes and their outright obvious fraud, but Wall Street, right? And everybody saw it, everybody in the world, and they're all doing that nod like Max is doing right now. It's like, okay, now we see. If this is gonna be a rigged game, then we're gonna look for any of your vulnerabilities within this game and rig it back against you.
Right. The New York Times says Wall Street was one of the last bastions of power to be overrun by the populist movement because of the high barriers to entry.
Yes.
And that's right. Those barriers to entry have been eliminated because of free online trading, because of all the stimulus checks that made a lot of people lots of free cash to have available to do something like this. There's apparently $65 billion in the war chest of the biggest hedge fund in the world now, which is Reddit and Wall Street Bets. So they've got a lot of cash and energy and expertise to go after targets out there that they perceive to have stolen their money in 2008. I would agree that's true. They are now impacting retribution. And more power to them. The New York Times does say that there's no clear kind of end game where this is all going. I, of course, would disagree with the New York Times on that point because the end game is Bitcoin.
You mentioned the stimulus checks, and on the one hand, these concern trolls and the New York Times do say, oh, these people are going to lose all their money. Well, they know it's a game and it was given to them for free, and they know there's more free money coming to them right now. But I also want to point out that this definitely cements Trump's role as a chaos agent, because I also read in the past week that in 2020, it was the biggest transfer of wealth in U.S. history to the bottom 50%. So the bottom 50% got the most transfer of wealth to them in U.S. history. So they have all of this money of this free stimulus, and they have these Robinhood apps that allow them not only to trade for free, but also to trade like really sophisticated weapons, like these sophisticated options, not just basic options, like deep, crazy options, and borrow and leverage themselves up just like a hedge fund.
Yeah, that's an amazing point, that they know that more free money is coming. Just like the hedge funds in Wall Street have banked on bailouts ever since really 1987. They were bailed out. They were bailed out in 2008. They were bailed out after the dot-com crash. They were bailed out continuously, and as a matter of fact, that bailout continues to this day in the form of quantitative easing, which is just a rolling bailout of crooked banks. Now, the Reddit crowd understands that because the Federal Reserve Bank has painted itself into a corner, and that it's impossible for them to raise rates now. They can only print money to keep the American economy Ponzi scheme going. These Reddit crowd knows that they have a margin of error here because they can make the occasional mistake. It'll be papered over. They're going to get another huge stimulus check. And so once they have that power and the economies of size, and they're angry, and the hedge funds are really vulnerable because they've oversold their positions with these naked short sales. In the case of GameStop, they sold something like 2 times more stock than exists of GameStop in the universe. That is an incredibly vulnerable position. So now these Reddit Wall Street bets crowd is going in for the kill. Go for it. Go for it.
Right. But, you know, again, there are concerned trolls who say these Redditors and these anonymous people with sometimes goofy names like Roaring Kitty and stuff like that, that, you know, they're buying these options and they don't understand that they have unlimited losses that they could possibly incur. But they're like, hey, all I have to my name is my $2,000 stimulus check. If I lose, you know, $2 billion, it's not my problem. It's Robinhood's or whoever their prime broker is. Or, you know, so they're that side, and they only have that $2,000 versus the other side is the hedge funds are also, despite being sophisticated, they're also facing unlimited losses, say, for example, with their GameStop thing, until regulators obviously will intervene on their behalf. But the fact is, like, they'll go from like having $44 million homes that they're buying on the Miami beachfront, as is the case with the guy from Melvin Capital, to having just waiting for a $2,000 stimulus check. That's the drop that they'll take. But the unlimited losses will ultimately be paid by the regulators, the taxpayers, the banks, like the whole system.
Right. The more losses they create, the more stimulus is going to be printed to increase the war chest of the Wall Street bets crowd to make more bets against the hedge funds to increase their profits. You know, you talk about the funny names some of these Wall Street bets people have online. Don't forget that during the 2008 crisis, we discovered a lot of hedge funds had funny names, like naming themselves after Star Wars characters and Chewbacca and the Chewbacca hedge fund, et cetera, things like that. So once you become in a position where you are mastering the game, you get cocky, you get full of yourself, and you make funny names for yourself, for your hedge funds, and that we're already at that stage with Wall Street Bets. It's the biggest hedge fund in the world, and those guys at Citadel, Ken Griffin Company, they're vulnerable. Stevie Cohen over there at his hedge fund, he now owns the Mets. He's super vulnerable. I'm not going to go to a Mets game this year, that's for sure. They're losers.
Well, I do want to point out that we don't know who any of these people are on Wall Street Bets, and at least of the 10 million people, there could be 1, there could be 10, there could be 1,000 hedge fund traders. You know, there's like 20,000 hedge funds. Who knows? Like, not all of them are the size of Citadel. So, you know, they might be going after their competitors. Who knows, like, who is in this market? But nevertheless, it's a free and fair open market, right? You're seeing some more price discovery at least happen, or at least be restored to the system. It's a fight that is worth watching how it unfolds, and whether or not, you know, when this has happened in the past, when a short squeeze was forced in silver back in late 1970s or 1980 with the Hunt brothers, what the regulators did is they came in and basically forced liquidation, that you could only sell. So we saw the inklings of that was presented as, you know, the private companies like Robinhood saying you can only sell GameStop or AMC or these other shares. But there might be a day if this catches on, if there is any, you know, if all these short squeezes attacks do work, that the regulators say that you can only sell, you know, a certain share. And it'll be interesting to see if it ever gets to that point.
Oh, it will get to that point because it always does. With the Hunt brothers, they had to increase margin requirements, for example. We see that all the time in the commodities market because commodity cornering in the market of commodities happens quite frequently. We had Choco Finger a couple of years ago who's trying to corner the cocoa market. The Hunt brothers crashed JP Morgan. Buy silver it responded from the regulators expanding JP Morgan's ability to sell short silver and to sell short naked silver contract. So they stepped in and they re-architected the market. Remember, when it comes to financial markets in the 21st century, there are no laws, there are no regulations. They're all written by the bankers. Remember, Obama's banking team were from Citibank. They came in and they wrote the financial regulations for the Obama administration. So they write their own, they're self-regulated, right? That's the buzz phrase that we always hear, like government should regulate Wall Street. They're, quote, self-regulated, which means that heads, we win, tails, you lose. That's what that means. Well, Wall Street Bets is upturn the apple cart and saying, hey, you know what? We want our money back. Here's how we're going to do it. And it doesn't matter if there are professional hedge funds in there making bets on other professional hedge funds. That's what you want. You want to attract as many into your side of the trade as you possibly can against that side of the trade until that side of the trade disappears. You've got all the money, and then something else happens. And by the way, that something else is called Bitcoin.
Right. And again, you know, pointing back to this New York Times article looking at the revolt of the public, because of course the public institutions are revolting themselves in a different, in an adjective way rather than a verb way. Or is that an adverb? They're revolting. Anyway, smartphone-based trading apps like Robinhood changed the situation by introducing commission-free trades and an interface that made executing a gamma squeeze as straightforward as ordering a burrito from Uber Eats. Suddenly, millions of amateurs could organize themselves, generate their own market research and investment theses, drum up excitement in Reddit threads and TikTok videos, and enter the casino with the big boys. Whether storming the high roller tables has helped them financially is another question entirely.
Right. When I was a stockbroker on Wall Street, I traded a lot of options, and to calculate, for example, the margin requirement on an option spread is difficult. And it would take, you know, do it myself, you know, on paper or pencil, and like, oh my gosh, you know, what's the margin requirement? Here on these apps, they're serving you all this data in real time, and you've got mark to market in real time, and you've got just about everything an options trader could ever want in real time for free. And these are powerful weapons and powerful tools in the right hands. Anyway, speaking of whatever we're talking about, which is probably the end of Wall Street, stay tuned. Much more coming your way. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to Bali, Indonesia, and speak with Dea Rezkitha of Kelas Bitcoin. Dea, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max. Glad to be here.
All right. I should mention you have a podcast also. My Bitcoin Story is the name of it. Now, first, why not tell us your Bitcoin story, how living in Bali made your story unique?
I bought Bitcoin in 2016 from a Bitcoin ATM that was installed in Indonesia. And it was really interesting in 2016. So I guess that's like the golden age of Bitcoin where everyone can pay Bitcoin. So we have also a website called Bit Island that shows all the places in Bali where you can where you can pay with Bitcoin, basically. So that's my first encounter with Bitcoin, and then I use it for my business, and then fell in love with it. Helped me a lot of time with my business. So yeah, it's been really great.
Your company, Kelas Bitcoin, it provides education for Indonesia. So what groups are you looking to educate? Who's really taking to Bitcoin, and where do you find some resistance?
Right now, in Indonesia is actually the biggest, one of the biggest country when it comes to internet user, especially in Southeast Asia. We have 300 million population, and almost 50% of them are internet user. So I'm targeting mostly millennials, and especially teaching them how to save in Bitcoin, because as Indonesia, we don't have really a saving technology where you can save your money and store your wealth. So this is my primary focus, which is teaching people how to save. But I guess the resistance is coming from because in Indonesia, there's a lot of scam going on. So people always think when they see something from internet, they thought it's a scam, or there's something some kind of a hidden agenda. So really try to educate people what is the benefit of storing their wealth in Bitcoin. And also just like, maybe teach them a little bit how to earn money through trading like that.
People I talk to today, people of millennial generation, they think about Bitcoin as a savings technology. They don't think of it as a get-rich-quick scheme. They're thinking about it in terms of the future, in terms of having hard money that will be worth something in the future. And this is something that I talk to people all over the world, that they have this different way of thinking. Now, the way the economy has grown around the world, particularly in consumer countries, high consumer countries like the United States, for example, has been the opposite. The message has always been, don't save your money, spend all of it. As a matter of fact, go into debt. Now, which came first? You were interested in savings, or you got into Bitcoin? And then after getting into Bitcoin, you got interested in savings. How did that happen?
For me personally, obviously, in 2016, I guess it's just a matter of, like you see the price goes up. So like, oh, great, I make money, But I guess a lot of people, especially in Indonesia right now during the pandemic, they use a lot of cryptocurrency. Like, people are getting into trading and see like how we are like this whole economy catastrophe happening around the world also affected us. And then like, we also see like prices is going up. So like, what can we do to save ourselves during this, if there is another type of pandemic happening in the world? So I guess like, obviously the first thing to attract people is actually, hey, you can make money probably, but more and more just slowly just to teach them how to save their wealth in a secure and private manner. Because in Indonesia right now, we have like huge case where mutual fund is like being corrupted by the government, and then like people cannot get their claim for insurance, kind of like that. Or even like we have like some kind of fintech where you can store e-money and then people cannot withdraw their money. So there's a lot of like kind of censorship going on, but also like maybe not educated in terms of like how they can store it. So it's slowly like people will wake up about like how to store their wealth.
Now I'll tell you, one of your tweets is what really caught my attention, and the reason I have you on today, and because Bitcoin, there's some themes that are very common. As you're talking about the savings theme, the theme that governments can sometimes not be completely reliable, that the technology and financial institutions are sometimes very unreliable, and Bitcoin provides individual sovereignty, it provides savings, it's unconfiscatable. But then within every country, there is different cultural things happening. And you tweeted, quote, "Mythology is an ancient way to encrypt messages." And I thought this was very intriguing. So can you speak on this?
I mean, I live in Bali, so like Bali is like the majority in here like Hindu. So like in Hinduism, there's a lot of like, like mythology and stories. And I've personally like really captivated by the story itself and how it represents something, like for example, like in Hinduism, there is Goddess Lakshmi, where Goddess Lakshmi is representing wealth. And if you really know the story of like Lakshmi, it's also very fascinating how it's almost similar, like how it related to Bitcoin basically. Because for example, Lakshmi always been guarded by elephant, and then in Hinduism, elephant is represent as the protector of wealth. So that's like, okay, Lakshmi is wealth, and then there's the protector of wealth. So like Bitcoin is like protector of wealth. And then how in Lakshmi, like, like the things that if you want to be surrounded by wealth, that you have to also you have to also like, understand like several symbolism, like, she has like a gold in her pot, and then like she has 4 hands that represent like righteousness, desire, wealth, and also liberty. So that's like, I don't know, like this kind of key phrases like also represent Bitcoin. So I found like it's very interesting. There is that mythology is like being passed on through human generation, and if you can decipher mythology, you can get wisdom. And the same thing like how with Bitcoin, it's a cryptocurrency, right? And then if you can decipher it, you get the private keys, then you can get the wealth as well. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, I really like this idea, basically, that mythology and symbolism is a way to pass knowledge and wisdom from generation to the following generations. And of course, Hinduism, one of the major religions in the world, that has a tremendously rich history of this type of mythological origins and many symbols. And I've been to Bali, and I was completely immersed in the culture there. It's very beautiful. The aesthetic of it is tremendous. So when you say that Bitcoin and the encrypted part of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, there's a relation to Hinduism and the culture there. Were you given a fresh look? It gave you a different look on Bitcoin, but did it also get a different look on Hinduism?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, the whole point why I was like getting this idea is actually through like, I help retreat. So like I was in a Tantra retreat, and then we were talking about, like all the symbolism, the goddesses, the gods in Hinduism, kind of like that. So yeah, it's very fascinating. Like, it makes me really look back again to our ancient civilization. Obviously, our ancient civilization is really advanced, and all people like our ancestors knows a lot about wealth, about happiness, about a lot of things, right? So there must be like something that you can learn from mythology, and something that you can learn from this thing that we can implement nowadays, which is yeah, I mean, like right now we see it, that people mix between the modern technologies and also like ancient wisdom, meditation, kind of like that. We are going back in that era as well.
And then in Western cultures, of course, under the work of Carl Jung, who was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, there's tremendous look at the mythological continuity between different epochs and how symbols carry that message forward. And so it's interesting how with the currency of Bitcoin, this seems to be another ribbon tying this bow all together. But let's leave the world of mythology for a second and talk about the government in Indonesia. What's their attitude toward Bitcoin, if they have any attitude at all? This is something every country is going through right now. What's the status in Indonesia?
It's very interesting because, as I mentioned before, Indonesia has a big population, right? We have like 300 million population, and then half of them like internet user, but there's a lot of people that are unbanked right now. So and it's made, and it's because like the country is so fast. We have like 17,000 islands. So to create an infrastructure of bank branches is not very, it's not very cost effective, I guess, and it's very hard. So the government is actually promoting financial technology, and there's a lot of like startups that focus on fintech and also cryptocurrency. In 2018, basically cryptocurrency is being regulated as one of the commodity asset that we can trade, and then like all of the crypto exchange is actually listed. Like, you need to get some kind of a government license to to have a crypto exchange. And just recently, I guess a few months ago, the government also like announced like 200 different coins that you can trade in Indonesia. So it seems that more and more Indonesian government is warming up to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I guess like right now is just a matter of adoption, like whether people will be will use cryptocurrency. But actually, like I don't have the current data, but like from 2018, there are like 30 million user in like crypto exchange, and then they trade like almost like I think like $10 million like every day, kind of like that. And there's also like one island in Indonesia where 90% of their population is actually, they get their money from trading. So they are like traders in this one tiny island.
Wow,
it's very interesting.
I want to move there. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's an island of Bitcoin, and it's a Hindu paradise. All right. Dea Rezkitha, we must say goodbye, but thanks for being on the Keiser Report.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All righty, and that's going to do it for this edition of Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Dea Rezkitha of Kelas Bitcoin in Bali, Indonesia. Until next time, bye, y'all.